In our last module, we talked about prototype theories. They're an instance of this class of theories called similarity probability theories. Now we want to turn our attention to the other major player in this camp, exemplar theories of concepts. We want to again think about exemplar theories by thinking about how they understand conceptual structure. And what we'll see is that conceptual structure is similar but not the same in exemplar theories. Specifically, while prototype theories suppose that we extract a single list of features that represents that central tendency, that set of properties that's the most common amongst the instances of that category that we've encountered, exemplar theory supposes that we in fact use multiple different exemplars, multiple models that we use to match when we categorize. The process of categorization is similar between exemplar theories and prototype theories. It's a matter of similarity judgments, and it's based on feature matching. But because there's more structure and more data, that is, there are multiple exemplars with multiple different kinds of features, then that process of similarity judgment based on feature matching is more complicated and nuanced than it is with that single, simple set of features. Now I'll give you an example of this to illustrate this using the concept of dogs. Finally, we want to notice that exemplar theories allow us to explain typicality effects in the same way that prototype theories do. And they help us, therefore, to understand this important feature, this inherent vagueness in our concepts that facilitates flexible categorization across a variable and complex perceptual environment. And again, I'll illustrate this using the concept of dogs. So Menden lists off a set of 4 assumptions. He thinks all of them are ultimately subject to question. He doesn't think that we should buy into any of them completely, at least. He thinks that together the 4 of them do a nice job of characterizing prototype theories, and that exemplar theories are less aptly characterized because they don't seem to accept, or at least be required to accept, all of these assumptions. So the first assumption is that similarity between 2 things increases as a function of the number of features or properties they share, and decreases as a function of mismatching or distinctive features. So in other words, things that look alike are judged to be more similar than things that look dissimilar. The second assumption is that these features can be thought of as independent and additive in our concepts, so that you can basically assign a point value to the features and a threshold number, so that once you reach that number, you're a member of the category. Until you reach that number, you're not a member of the category. So we can think of the way that similarity is judged based on feature mapping as each feature being independent of the others, and they're additive, and that each feature contributes a set amount to the total evaluation of the membership in that category. Third, features determining similarity are roughly on the same level of abstractness. So they're all relatively accessible, perceptually salient sorts of features. And finally, 4, these similarity principles is sufficient to describe conceptual structure, and therefore a concept is more or less equivalent to a list of its features. Okay? With that in mind, let's take a look at exemplar theory by looking at a class or a category that has very diverse instances, highly variable. So dogs include things like Great Danes and Mastiffs, and they include things like this dog on the left, exemplar 1, a Brussels Griffon. These things differ in terms of their size. They differ in terms of their coloring. They differ in terms of the fact that most dogs, like the Great Danes, have fur, whereas the Brussels Griffons are some of the few dogs that actually have hair instead of fur. So when we're presented with a stimulus, a visual stimulus, say, The brain, according to these theories, says, hey, I'm going to match. I'm going to look for things that are similar by matching features, and when I reach a certain threshold, I'll say that this thing constitutes an instance of that category. When we have a highly variable and complex category, something where the instances oftentimes share very few properties, in the same way that the robin and the penguin share very few properties, it becomes difficult to understand how it is that we actually manage to quickly and easily categorize these diverse instances as instances of that same concept. How do we do it? Well, exemplar theory supposes that, hey, when we have concepts like this, the best way to do that is if we have lists of features that represent different polarities within that population. So large dogs with short fur, for example, and small dogs that have hair. Those might be two quite different examples of the same concept. We want to include them in the same category, even though they have almost nothing in common with each other at the level of superficial, visual, or perceptually salient features. And so by having these two lists of features, by categorizing, by matching one or the other, we're then able to accommodate this very diverse variable class with a single concept like that. So this other theory that's based on similarity and probability is called the exemplar view. It denies that people generate a single summary representation. That is, that they abstract a set of features that represent the central tendency, the most commonly had features in the population. Instead, exemplar theory holds that categories are represented by means of stored exemplars. So exemplar theory holds the first of these assumptions, that similarity is a matter of sharing of features, but it opts out of the other three, or at least it explicitly rejects the fourth one. There isn't a single list of features, and it need not hold 2 and 3, at least as adamantly as maybe prototype theory does. So when we think about the structure of our dog concept has a different structure in the exemplar theory. We have a number of different exemplars, and around them they have that same prototype structure to them. That is, large dogs like the Great Dane and the Mastiff with short fur, for instance, they'll be very prototypical when judged using this exemplar. As we move farther and farther away from that, if we're going out in this direction, not towards another exemplar, then the concepts become less and less definitively applicable, i.e. more and more vague. If we have another exemplar here that has as its properties, its salient features, these features that we associate with our Brussels Griffon, then instances like this will be categorized quickly and easily as members of our dog concept because they're very prototypical of this instance. As we move farther and farther away, right, then we'll have less and less definitive, more and more typicality in our categorizations. As we move from one to the other, we may see increasing or decreasing typicality depending upon whether we're moving in a direction towards another exemplar or we're moving in a direction away from exemplars. And so we still have the emergence of typicality, but now we have more information and more complexity in our conceptual structure. And as a result, we're capable of dealing with more variations within the class of objects that falls under that concept or category.